And now, without any further delay, it is now my pleasure to introduce your presenter from Sybase, an SAP company, Lori Barker, Senior Manager, Product Marketing for Power Designer. Lori, you have the floor.
Thanks so much. And welcome, everybody, to today's Blueprint TechCast, our Q1 2012. Can't believe it's already March here. We're very excited to be having this webcast with our partner, Silwood Technology. As many of you know, the announcement was a couple of years ago. Sybase was purchased by SAP and is now very interested in helping folks using SAP applications to extract the metadata and move it into Power Designer. So to help us understand how Silwood's Sapphire tool can help us, we have on the line Nicholas Porter and Roland Boulevant. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Roland.
Thank you very much, Laurie, and welcome everybody. My name, as Laurie said, is Roland Boulevant. I work for Silwood Technology, and I'm joined here today by Nick Porter, who's our technical director, and he'll be doing the bulk of the work to show you Sapphire a bit later after I've gone through a few slides. The objective today is that by the end of the session, you have a better understanding of how you can gain business value and technical value out of the metadata that is the underlying structures of your SAP applications or your Oracle applications, how you can use that with Power Designer to improve project delivery and business outcomes of your projects. So I suspect that a number of you have not heard of Silwood Technology before, so a very, very brief company introduction. We're a UK-based company. We've been in business for about 20 years and started off in the sort of traditional data modeling world, and very soon realized that there was a particular issue around reverse engineering large applications from SAP and Oracle that required fixing or would help people with understanding that information in more detail. So we built a product called Sapphire, which we specialize purely in discovery of metadata from those large, complex, and sophisticated CRM and ERP applications. And over the past few years, we've had a very close relationship with Sybase and a very tight technical integration with Power Designer. And Nick is going to show you exactly how that works a little bit later. Now, it's quite possible that as you haven't heard of us, you may think we are, we've not been around much, but as I said, we've been around a long time. And just to let you know that this is not new technology that has not been tested in the field or with other customers. We do have a good list of blue chip customers who've already gained value from using Sapphire. So there's some good household names there that you may have come across. And beg pardon. And not just to say that we've also had good endorsement from product analysts like Blaw Research. Philip Howard reviewed our product in detail last year, and this was his summary comment about Sapphire and how it's of value to SAP and Oracle customers. So what is metadata intelligence, and what are we trying to help organizations deal with? So we all understand that metadata is the data about the data. So it's the definitions of your tables, your columns, your fields, and their interrelationships. And we focus on the large ERP and CRM applications where understanding that information, that metadata, is critical to the delivery of those projects and helping organizations to deliver those program benefits by understanding that. We feel that there's two types of people that benefit from having this understanding of metadata. There's the traditional data modelers, people who are looking at enterprise architectures, data governance, and how these large applications fit within strategic enterprise-wide data models and architectures. And then there's what people we call data workers, who are just as important, but these are people who use metadata to help them with their tasks around a variety of data-oriented projects, and we'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. Those data workers would be more interested in consuming that information for use with projects such as master data management or data warehousing or application rationalization, where you're actually needing to move data and understand it in the context of that project to enable the project benefits to be delivered. But what metadata intelligence helps you to answer is the questions that are here on the screen. So where is the correct destination for a piece of data in an integration project? How do I create a model of the metadata I need for my data warehouse? Many, many different project types and many, many different questions that need to be answered in order to produce the business outcomes from your project that you're looking for. In some applications, these questions are quite easy to answer. But typically, in the large enterprise ERP and CRM applications from Oracle and SAP, because of the scale of these applications, because of their level of sophistication and the broad range of functionality that they deliver, they tend to be extremely large. So, for example, SAP, if you implement SAP ECC6 now, you start with 90,000 tables before you add some more, and then you can make changes to the existing tables. So those data structures in all of those applications can become quite complex and quite difficult to understand. And this sophistication means that it often takes specialist knowledge to understand these applications and to be able to make use of the metadata in the context of those data warehousing and application rationalization and master data management projects that we all get involved in. And that specialist knowledge may be difficult to find, it may be rare within your organization, or you may have to go outside to find it. And that can deliver a drawback or a delay to your project. And this complexity also leads to another problem, which is the challenges in making or in enabling an SAP application or an Oracle application to work easily and productively within the boundaries of your broader IT ecosystem. So how does it integrate with other products? How does it work with cloud-based applications? How do you work with external applications where you're trying to integrate data? All of those types of projects can be made more costly, more time-consuming, and more risky because of the difficulty to understand the underlying data structures of those applications. So if we're able to understand the metadata, if we can find a way of making it easier to access and more easily understandable by people who perhaps are not very deep SAP technical specialists, then we can start to deliver faster projects. And what we can help people to do is to have a source of trusted application metadata that can be reused time and time again across different projects, that can be shared between different project groups and product groups, which helps to increase the agility, the agility of projects. If you can have access to this metadata in an easy, straightforward way, then you can reduce the time and cost of the data discovery and analysis phases early in a project. And this helps to improve the accuracy of your analysis and ultimately the accuracy and the deliverable of your project. Traditionally, what we've done is to look for documentation, if there is any, which is often out of date, to read publications that you might find that have been written maybe a few years before your application was actually built, so that they're not necessarily up to date. You might search the internet for data models, templates, that you can find, but if your application has been customized, then that is only a halfway house to a solution. You may look for those internal specialists who are happy to help once they've got the time to help, and then hopefully they give you the right answer, but if they don't give you the right answer, then you have to go back and do the whole project with them again. Or you might hire external consultants, and there are some tools that you might use to help you along the way with some of this. So these can be challenging, they can be risky, can be inaccurate and time-consuming, and because of the manual nature of doing this, it has very limited reusability. And in today's world, where IT departments and projects are being asked to be delivered in ever shorter timescales, reusability and accuracy are key to helping improve the business trust in the data. So Sapphire, which Nick is going to demonstrate to you in a few moments, if you look at the top right-hand segment, what Sapphire does is it extracts all of the information, from the metadata information, from your ERP or CRM application from Oracle or SAP. It includes all of the customizations, the long names, the short names, and all the relationships. And it stores that information in its own repository where people can access it, so non-technical specialists can access and use this information, can explore it, search it, filter it, analyze it, and ultimately export it out for consumption in Power Designer, so it can make more use of the power and the functionality within Power Designer by giving it this valuable information from SAP or Oracle applications. And going up the left-hand side, the benefits that accrue from Sapphire are that it, as I said earlier, it radically reduces the time and cost of that source data analysis phase of your project. It significantly improves the chances for project success and for delivering on time and within budget. And most importantly, it insists in improving the acceptance and trust in the data from the business side. And those three benefits on the left-hand side were not ones that we've made up. Those were actually told to us, relayed to us by a customer, a large semiconductor company who uses our product for SAP, for their SAP applications. So what Sapphire is doing is it helps you to derive real value from the metadata, to be able to use it in conjunction with Power Designer to help with your data-oriented projects and your architecture projects. So we extract metadata from all of the main SAP and Oracle applications. That information is stored in a repository. It includes all the metadata, the customizations, multiple languages. It delivers an application hierarchy. And this information can be shared and is reusable. It allows users to have an intuitive, functionally rich interface into that metadata so they can search it, explore it, analyze it, filter it, and export it. And it also delivers a common interface. So if, for example, you were using SAP and Siebel, you have a common interface into that metadata. So you only have to learn one tool to do this. We use subject areas to create the information to be exported out to Power Designer. And the note there I've got with flat 0 row, what that means is within SAP we can deliver you just the tables that have got data in them. So we instantly reduce the amount of analysis you do right up front. And then we export those subject areas out to Power Designer and occasionally with integration with other tools. So I'm now going to hand over to Nick to talk about, or in a moment I'm going to hand over to Nick. So, sorry, I forgot that I had this slide. Sapphire works with Power Designer. We have a full API connectivity with Power Designer, which means that when we export a subject area from Sapphire into Power Designer, you get a fully functional, fully populated model in Power Designer format, instantly usable within the Power Designer environment. And we also support multiple versions of Power Designer, so it's not just the version for today. we support the current and previous versions of Power Designer. So just in summary, we deliver all of the table information from the applications data dictionary, all of the relationships regarding those tables, the logical, physical descriptions, the application hierarchy, which is a different way of navigating through SAP and Oracle. We include all the customizations and a full intuitive searching and filtering interface. And now I am going to hand over to Nick Porter, who's going to take you through the product in a bit more detail and show you a demonstration.
Thanks very much, Roland. So Roland's already mentioned the products that we support. So we're delivering similar functionality in terms of reverse engineering all the environments that you can see listed on the screen here. So really pretty much any release of SAP. We can do SAP BW, Siebel, PeopleSoft Enterprise, the Oracle eBiz suite, what used to be called Oracle Financials, and the J.D. Edwards Enterprise One product as well. So pretty much the SAP applications and then the ERPs that are now owned by Oracle. I just want to give you a little overview as to how we go about doing this. How do we get the metadata out of these environments? And one kind of common misconception that we often see when people first look at the product is that they often imagine that we're delivering with the product a kind of pre-built set of metadata. We're delivering what you might call a reference model, for instance, of SAP. And that's not the case. When a customer buys and starts using Sapphire, they connect Sapphire to their own SAP instance or instances and reverse engineer the metadata from SAP or Oracle or whatever it might be. So it's a little bit like the process that Power Designer will go through in reverse engineering a system. Power Designer can attach to the system catalog of an RDBMS and reverse engineer. And we're doing something similar. We're reverse engineering by looking into the data dictionary of the underlying ERP package. So rather than looking at the system catalog, we're looking at the proprietary data dictionary of SAP or PeopleSoft, J.D. Edwards. Each of those environments has got its own data dictionary where it defines its own set of metadata. So this slide here is giving just a very simplified view of the kind of architecture of those products, where you have an underlying database which stores not only the data, but it also stores the metadata, the data that defines the tables in that system. And then you've got a client, a thin ERP client, typically, and then there's an application server. And that database then is storing not only the data, the real business data, but it's also storing a set of proprietary metadata. And that metadata is used by the application server. So typically, for instance, an SAP system, it's using that metadata in order to interpret the information in that database. So it's using that metadata, for instance, to decide which text to display on a screen. So SAP, for instance, has got a very sophisticated multi-language implementation and can present screens in different languages based upon text that it finds within the metadata. And it's that metadata that we're extracting. So Sapphire then, Sapphire sits on top of its own repository. And the Sapphire repository is just a relational database, typically Oracle or SQL Server, where we instantiate a set of tables where we're going to store the extracted metadata. And then we go through an extraction phase where we do this reverse engineering that we talked about, where we pull the metadata out of the SAP system or the PeopleSoft, whatever it might be, ERP system, including any customization. So as I mentioned earlier on, we're not just delivering a kind of reference model. If the customers added their own tables or modified any of the data structures, we pull out those definitions as well. And then we can take that metadata, we can subset it, and that's what I'm going to be showing you in just a second, how we go about doing that, before we can export it into a Power Designer model. Okay, I don't want to really talk too much of specifics about SAP. So what I'm going to do now is just going to share my desktop and then actually show you some of these features within the product. So what I'm going to do now is switch into showing you Sapphire itself, and I'm going to do the demonstration with an SAP system. This is a pretty modern release of SAP. It's an ECC 6 system, but really most of the features I'm going to show you are equally applicable to any of the other ERPs. So if we were to look at JD Edwards or eBiz or Siebel, the way that you go about manipulating the metadata within Sapphire is identical really across all of these releases. Obviously the content of the data will be different, but the actual methods that I'm going to show you for manipulating them are pretty much identical across all the ERPs that we support. And as Roland was describing, a system like SAP has got an awful lot of tables. So this view of the metadata we've extracted shows you the kind of scale of the problem, if you like. So this view of the metadata we've extracted shows a list of all the tables, all the base tables we find in the system. And as you can see at the bottom there, in this particular system, there are just over 90,000 base tables within this system. And that first column there shows what SAP call the technical name. This is like the physical name for a table. So if you were to look into the underlying database, you would see physical tables in the database with names like that. And then we've got a descriptive name next to it. So a more meaningful descriptive name is available. And that's really only available by virtue of reverse engineering this data dictionary, the proprietary SAP data dictionary. And all of the ERPs that we support, they all work in a similar manner of having a descriptive name within their own environment, which is not really available by looking into the underlying system catalog. So given the scale of the metadata that we're faced with here, part of the challenge of any project that's going to consume this metadata is to do what we would describe as a scoping exercise. You need to cut down the volume of metadata down into more manageable groups. And just to kind of demonstrate that, I'm going to do something very, very simple. I'll just do a very simple search to look for any tables that have got the string customer somewhere within their description. And given that there are 90,000 tables, and given that SAP is a very sophisticated and complex environment, that just doesn't come back with one or a handful of tables. That comes back with well over 1,000 hits. There are over 1,000 tables with customer somewhere in the title. So kind of next challenge really is how can we go about looking at and finding what are the important tables. If I was trying to kind of identify the customer table of SAP, how would I go about doing that? And there are a number of ways within the product to actually address that issue. And one of the simplest and most effective is, if you look over to the right here, there are two columns, number of child tables and number of parent tables. And what they give, they tell us how many related tables there are, how many parent and child tables that each of these tables in the list have. So if we take, for instance, this one here, it's got no child tables and 45 parent tables. In other words, it gives its primary key to no other tables in the system, and it receives primary keys as foreign keys from 45 tables in the system. And what we can do is we can sort the result set in descending order of related tables. So I always think of this, it's a little bit like kind of a crude Google search, on the basis that things that are related to lots of other things tend to come to the top of the list. And when I do that, General Data in Customer Master, which is the main SAP table, comes to the top. I'm just going to make sure that we are still live here, because I can see a problem.
And I'm still seeing your desktop. Can you mouse around? We'll just verify.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just saw my office flashing. Forgive me there, folks. So by virtue of doing that search, we've got this table, General Data in Customer Master, has come to the top of the list. And for those of you who know anything about SAP, you'll know that that is one of the main tables about customer information in an SAP system.
I'm sorry, Nick. I think you'll need to go back to sharing out your desktop again. It looks like...
okay.
Yeah. You could just begin that again.
Oh.
And go ahead. We're seeing your desktop.
Okay. So I'll just go back one step there then. So we've sorted the result set by a number of related tables, and we've got this table, General Data in Customer Master, has come to the top of the list. And if I double click on that table, I can now see more information about that table. I can actually look now at the columns that make up that table. And again, down the first column there is are the technical names. If we were to look at this table in the underlying database, these are the column names that we would see. And then we've got these descriptive names in the third column, much easier to understand, telling us what the attribute is really about. And we can see that the primary key is based upon the first two attributes. You'll also notice as I click on each attribute, at the bottom right here, there is an attribute definition. Again, all this information is coming, we've extracted it directly from SAP, so it's as it's defined in the SAP system. See, being a very well-engineered product, they often give very good long definitions for these attributes. And we can also search for embedded strings within those attributes as well. And you'll also see these green relationship symbols which show us foreign keys. So this is the customer table, and there are quite a lot of foreign keys on here. So for instance, there is one here to an account group, a foreign key to an account group. And I can see over here the name of the parent table that supplies that foreign key, and if I wish, I can navigate up the relationship path up to that parent table that supplies that foreign key. So let's go back to the list. So what we're trying to do here then is kind of scope important customer tables. And we found one which looks fairly promising. So what we probably want to do now is start to record the results of this. And Roland mentioned the idea of a subject area. And a subject area is just a folder where we can group together tables of interest. So what I'll do is I'll create a new subject area called Webcast. And currently it's an empty folder. And then I can take my KNA1 General Data in Customer Master table. I'll drag and drop that into that subject area. So I've just started to record the fact that this is something I think is going to be relevant to my scoping exercise. And then maybe what I might do is look now in a bit more detail at the related tables. So I can pull this pop-up window, and what this does, this shows me now the directly parent and child related tables in these lists. So I could now go through these lists looking for directly related tables. If I wanted to, what I could do, I could select all of them and add them to this subject area. But given I'm going to make a model in a minute, I'm just going to select a few just to kind of give us a nice model. So I'm going to pull some of these these parent-related tables, some of these lookup tables. I'm going to pull those across into this subject area. So what I've done now then is I've made a subject area. I've grouped into that subject area a set of tables which look as if they're relevant to my requirement. And what I also could do, I could use that subject area to subset the tables. So rather than seeing all 90,000 tables, I can just look at the set in my webcast subject area. And the subject area is also a vehicle for exporting information into Power Designer. So what I'm going to do next is just push that set of tables into a Power Designer model. And I've got a wizard to help me do this. So I'm going to just drag and drop the webcast subject area into the export area. And I'm going to create a Power Designer model called webcast. And what it will do now, as Roland was explaining earlier on, it will use the Power Designer API to build a model. This is quite a small model in Power Designer based upon that set of tables. So it's exported 5 entities, 5 tables, a bunch of attributes, and a set of relationships. And if I now switch over into Power Designer, then now we've got a fully populated data model based upon that set of tables. So I could include as many or as few tables in this subject area as I want. This is a fully populated, automatically built data model based upon that very focused set of tables that I've chosen. And if I just quickly look at the information behind here, now I've got full details of all the columns. I've got the both the technical name and the column name. I've got data typing, foreign and primary keys identified, all the relationships identified. If I go into a given attribute, I've got the attribute definition that we looked at. That comes across as well. Okay, so we're now going to show another couple of other features of Sapphire. So this approach I've shown you so far, this presents all the tables in the system and allows us to do searches across all the tables. And another method we have of looking at the metadata is using what we call the application hierarchy. And the application hierarchy presents a series of functions. The highest level, it's giving us, in this case, a set of SAP modules. And we can open up these nodes here to go down through various levels of detail, right down to individual functions and programs and the associated tables. So this is a kind of where use capability within the product. And again, SAP is a very, very complex environment. So just going through the nodes like I'm doing at the moment would not be a very practical way of searching for things. So we have a search capability within the product. And again, using the customer idea, what I could do, I could search for any node that's got custom in the title. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to search for any node in this hierarchy which has got this description, create customer. And if I do that, it'll go off and look for any nodes in here. And there is a convention that we're using here in terms of the way these nodes are identified. So these orange nodes, these are transactions. So any of you who use SAP will know that SAP uses these transaction codes in order to instigate certain pieces of processing. So if you want, for instance, to add a sales order, you can type in a particular transaction code and it will bring up that screen. The green icons a bit further down, these are functions. So I've got 22 nodes that have got create customer somewhere in the title. This one here, create customer centrally, for instance, that looks kind of promising. So if I double click on that, it will position me in the hierarchy where that transaction lives. And that transaction, it belongs to a program called Customer Master Data. It's a transaction which is part of the Customer Master Data program. So again, if I was trying to scope customer information, this seems like quite a good place to start. And if we scroll down a bit now, each of these blue icons is a table that is used by that particular program. And again, what I could do if I wanted to is to create a subject area and add these tables to a subject area. And then I've got a very nice grouping of the tables which are used by the customer master function. And I think if we look a little bit further down, not surprisingly, one of the tables there is that KNA1 general data in customer master that we looked at when we first did the search. And again, I could get into the table details by going into this screen. Okay, so that hopefully gives you a good introduction to some of the capabilities of the product. As I said, I've been concentrating on SAP, but we can apply that same kind of capability to any of the other ERPs. And what I'm just doing now, last thing I'm going to show you, this is what's called the repository manager in Sapphire. And in my particular system, I've got not only a set of SAP systems, but I've got JD Edwards systems and PeopleSoft and Oracle eBiz systems. And if I was to switch into any of those, you would see very, very similar capabilities to what I've shown you for SAP. Okay, so I'm going to switch back now to the presentation, and I'm now going to hand over to David Dickman to carry on with the presentation.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent, excellent demonstration. And what I'd like to do now is actually take a few moments to basically say, now that you've got that metadata into a tool like Power Designer, what else can something like Power Designer do to take that and bring your metadata management to the next level? I'd like to start with a quote from Roxanne from Gartner, who's talking about data modeling and data architecture and what's required to get to enterprise information architecture. And fundamentally what we're all about these days is this idea of using information as a corporate asset from wherever it may be, whether it's inside of SAP or another packaged application or in homemade applications, or being moved out to these master data management and business intelligence environments that are going to be on that information edge. And Roxanne tells us as business executive leadership increasingly recognizes the importance of information in supporting those strategic business initiatives. So it will become managing the information and data models will become more important. So basically, the more we need to have a strategic focus on data and information, the more those models are going to become important to our success. Now, when we look at the idea of the kinds of models we've got, one thing is quite clear to me. We have a lot of technical diagrams and models and sources of knowledge about our enterprise information, whether it be requirements models, business process models, conceptual and logical data models, physical data models like the ones that we'll be bringing in with Silwood Sapphire. And that's not the only source of information we have. There's other sources. This could come in the form of Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, Excel spreadsheets, sticky notes, pen and paper, all these other places where information about our information systems, about who and what's using them at a business level, to physically how is it stored and what's it look like so we can extract and understand that, are going to be part of our purview. And getting all of that metadata all together and aligned in such a way that it becomes a useful center for us to manage the governance and the standardization and align that with regulatory compliance and all these other things we're going to need to do is going to be where a tool like Power Designer steps in. And Power Designer uniquely helps us solve that with our link and sync technology. Fundamentally, what Power Designer does is it brings all of the different model types together, from conceptual and logical data models to understand what is the business and how are we going to instantiate that through multiple physical implementations, to all of the different physical data models that represent those different data systems. tied to business process models so we know what is the context of our data and how is it being used, down to physical data movement models that describe how information goes and transforms from one set of sources to another set of staging areas to a set of targets. And of course, we don't leave XML out of the picture. We have information being moved in messages or information being stored in XML documents and other sources. We want to be able to bring all that metadata together. But we want to do that in such a way that we leave the right visualization to the right person at the right time. In other words, the right model for the right stakeholder needs to be pure in its own form and linked or synchronized with the other form. So we don't want to impose physical criteria on a business model or impose too much abstraction to a model that's being used for implementation. But we need to have both those models truly represent a single form of truth. And that's what link and sync does for us. Any element that's aligned with any other element, we store the link. Any element that can become more generalized or more specialized will transform in both directions to make sure everything truly represents what is really there and is fully aligned. So what makes Power Designer unique compared to other industry standard data modeling tools fundamentally are the fact that we've got all of these pieces integrated into a single common framework. Everything from requirements modeling, which typically you'll find either separated or not present in data modeling tools, to conceptual data models aligned with business process models, so a single enterprise version of the truth. Everything from the business glossary that captures business terms to create a real data dictionary, to understanding the entities and relationships and how they will basically form the core understanding of data for all business use cases, to the logical and physical models that make up these slivers of implementation from our enterprise for each project or each system or each application. Add to that hierarchical XML modeling. This is not done in a data model. This is not done in an object model. It's a true model designed to directly understand XML, aligned to physical data models or conceptual data models to ensure the data standards are met and it understands where it can be stored and recovered from relational persistent stores. Data movement modeling, often also found in separate tools or not present in other data modeling solutions, allow you to define and describe not just that this data comes from there and goes to there, but what are all the stages along the way regardless of the technology being used for data movement, and putting all of this into a single unified repository. That's what breaks down those metadata silos. That's what lets you leverage all the knowledge you're going to get out of your SAP system or other packaged application system using Silwood's technology and being able to put that context around it, put that business meaning and understanding, put that as-is versus to-be planning. How are you going to move and leverage that into something that can be strategic for the business? And to that end, the web-based repository portal allows all non-modelers full access to that metadata with optional authoring, which means that people at the business edge can now contribute to the business meaning of information published to the portal through the tool. You don't have to be a modeler to be able to contribute to the knowledge that is used to be able to understand, define, and describe the enterprise, because from there, what you can do is plan your future with version control. You have your as-is versus to-be, but with all those models together, you have your gap analysis and your enterprise-wide impact analysis, also unique capability of Power Designer. So now I can do things like, well, show me if I change this business requirement, where are my SAP systems? Where are my other applications? Where are my homemade applications? Where does all of this tie in? What business processes are affected if this regulation is changed? And what data does it use? All those questions can now be easily answered automatically from Power Designer. So Power Designer allows us to do things like, for example, capture our glossary of business terms and relate that to any number of models that can be used in any kind of framework. We can also capture things like business requirements, and these will be driven by the business, either import and export from Microsoft Word or Excel, and used to define everything from goals and objectives through to business and functional requirements. Techniques like the mapping editor ensure that source-to-target mappings can be defined at a column level in a complex way. Many-to-many mappings are supported, and these can transform into data movement models that allow us to lay out the landscape of how information is transformed through our enterprise, so that we can do things like run the impact analysis report, which shows as a tree view or in this case as a diagram. And by the way, these diagrams can be generated, printed, reported on, saved, versioned, and even compared So I can show how the impact today changed from the impact yesterday to see how the changes of systems are even affecting the impact of change on various change requests. Of course, all of that information can be shared over the web in the portal, which includes fully hyperlinked graphics, and selecting any element of the graphic allows you to go to its details. And from those details with the Portal Composer license, you can also start making some changes. So in this example, we can add additional comments to the order entity, perhaps describing it in a business way from the business steward using the website and not the tool on the client side. So modelers have full power, non-modelers have great access through these simpler user interfaces. So if you like what you've seen today and you like what you've heard, certainly there's lots of ways you can follow up, learn more, and do more. If you want to read some more, download the Bloor review of Sapphire at www.sybase.com/Silwood. We have a nice document on what's going on there. But the other thing you can do is schedule a customized demo or do something like schedule with us tips and tricks during the lunch and learn, because we find the best way to improve your evaluation experience is through having us help you solve your problems, put it in your context. So instead of just doing a general, hey, you could do these things, tell us what your information problems are, and we'll show you how we can solve them. If you're in North America, you simply use the 1-800-8-SYBASE number, press 1 for the sales option. And if you're outside North America and want to schedule your Power Designer demonstration, simply go to our website, sybase.com, look at the local offices, contact your local office, and anyone there will be happy to help you out. You can also get more information on Power Designer by going to www.sybase.com/PowerDesigner. And if you want to evaluate the product itself, simply click on the download trial. And I also know that Silwood has an evaluation version, so you can download Power Designer, download Sapphire, and use the two together in evaluation mode if you want to see how these things work and test drive them for yourself. So at this point, I would like to offer question and answers.
And David, this is Laurie Barker again. Thank you for that update on Power Designer. I just want to be clear to folks that if you're downloading the trial of Sapphire, you have to go to the Silwood site. It is not currently residing on the Sybase site. So with that, let me toss the first question from Fred over to the Silwood folks. Either Nick or Roland can answer this. How adaptable is the Sapphire metadata manager toolset for use with other types of systems beyond the ones mentioned, SAP, PeopleSoft, etc.? And the second part of the question is, can Sapphire be used on in-house custom-built data warehouse systems?
Okay. Yeah, Laurie, this is Nick. Thanks very much for that. So Sapphire really has been built specifically to address the applications that we've listed, the SAP and the Oracle apps, and we don't position Sapphire as a kind of general repository, if you like. So because we need the relationship information that we get from the data dictionary of each of these packages in order to kind of do the job that we do. So it's I guess the short answer to Fred's question is that we don't. It's not an extensible repository. It's not a repository with a capital R, if you like. It's not a generalized repository. It's built very specifically to address those environments that we support. And therefore, I guess the answer to the second part of the question is, we wouldn't be able to reverse engineer an in-house custom-built data warehouse environment, but obviously you could do that with Power Designer itself. And I guess that's where we would look to tools like Power Designer to do those kind of jobs. Power Designer can very nicely reverse engineer any standard database, and that's not really functionality that we're trying to recreate. Hope that answers the question, Fred.
Thank you. David, did you want to add something, or should I go on to the next question?
No, that seemed like a perfectly excellent answer.
All right. So let's toss this one to you, David. This is from Ginny, who asks, does Power Designer also support the management of taxonomies?
So what we're doing today with the glossary is the business glossary has the ability to define the term and define a hierarchical category leading up to the term. Now, a lot of organizations are looking at that and saying that is starting to look an awful lot like a taxonomy. And what we plan to do in future releases is actually allow multiple hierarchical frameworks to exist, representing multiple taxonomies or even ontologies on top of those business terms. So today, you really have one taxonomy that you can define through the categories, and that's how our organizations are using them today. But we plan to continue to enrich that as we see that this is an area where we can truly capture the context information, the relationship between terms and their meaning, and use that when we start looking at things like big data and unstructured data. This is the new model, the contextual models of the business terms and the taxonomies and ontologies that are related to them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. So we only have a few minutes, so please do send in your question if you have one. I feel like I'm running a game show here. I'm going to go back to Cheryl's question, which came in early on, asking about slide 13, which refers to SAP data services as a target. And she's wondering, would this target include information steward? And that is tossed over to you, Roland or Nick.
Thank you very much, Laurie. I thought it might come my way. This is Roland. So thanks for your question, Cheryl. It's a good question. We are working with some folk at SAP at the moment looking at this issue. The answer is that we're looking to export or to have a target, the data services product, which is the old ACTA, ETL, and data migration tool, as a direct target for sending information to. However, if you're looking for information to export information into Information Steward, that goes via a different route. So they're not actually the same product. And so exporting to Power Designer and then using Power Designer, we think would be able to export information into Information Steward. We think Information Steward will accept a Power Designer model format. So that's probably the answer to that question. But as I said on the slide, it's a bit of a future. We're looking at ways of helping organizations consume the information out of Sapphire and out of Power Designer in different ways. So that's hopefully that answers your question. Do email me if you want any more, if you've got any more subsequents, I think, to that.
Perfect. And I've got time for one more question, which comes from George asking David, can I export more than one subject area at the same time, creating multiple packages and or diagrams in a single Power Designer model?
Well, I think actually this is an excellent one for the folks from Stillwood. Perhaps, Nick, this is a good one for you, because I think the question is really, can I get this out of Sapphire and into Power Designer in this format? Certainly Power Designer can handle multiple packages and diagrams for multiple subject areas. So what's the method for exporting that?
Yeah, so yes is the very short answer to that question from George. So yes, we can export multiple subject areas. You know, in the little demonstration, for simplicity, I exported one. But we could take any number and generate them into a Power Designer model, and it will create separate packages for each one. So you effectively will have a Venn diagram kind of concept where you've got one large model with separate diagrams for each of the respective subject areas.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And we are most definitely at the top of the hour, and I don't see any pending questions that haven't already been covered. So I would like to thank you all for your time today, and we hope this has been valuable to you, and we will catch you in Q2's Blueprint TechCast. I'm Laurie Barker, signing off for the day. Thanks.
And thank you. Thanks to all.